Big exciting news as Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden prepare for the stimulus package that you desperately need. It was upwards of several days ago in which this channel was the first to report to you that Mitch McConnell is the new lead negotiator for the Republicans and Joe Biden the new lead negotiator for the Democrats. And what's important to understand is that since then, countless news reports have now confirmed this channel's reporting first. But what's incredibly important is that we now know that these two individuals singularly have more background working hand in hand and getting packages done on both sides of the political spectrum than any elected officials you could ever have before. This is incredible, great news. Finally, two people who know how to work together and get things done. And this is incredible. And it's also being a Mitch. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Being a Mitch, or good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. Incredible great news about why Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell are singularly the best people you would want to be negotiating your second stimulus package because they've done this countless times before. But now we know a little bit more about that today. Incredible great news on the path to getting your stimulus. It's coming. It's going to be coming. And the question is, how can they tailor this quickly enough so you get enough relief and get it in your hands? If you're not subscribed to this channel, please do. Go to the front of this channel, subscribe, because, boy, we are rolling out details from head to toe, left and right, whether it's hazard pay or SSI, whether it's EIDL or checks or stimulus checks or unemployment assistance. I'm making sure that you get all this money, all this information that you need in a given day, because things are changing by the hour. Also, a like of this video. In this video, I'll be going over the dynamic between Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden and why this is so important for everything that you are owed under the second stimulus package and why Joe Biden's remarks that he will do as many stimulus packages as he needs and as many stimulus checks as he needs to ensure you are through this pandemic is categorically the best words you could have from a person negotiating for you. Let's get to the breaking news. The breaking news as you sit here today is that Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell are the lead negotiators now for the second stimulus package. And what's important to understand is this is night and day from what we were dealing with before. Before I deal with what we dealt with before, because I think we sort of all want to forget about it, I wanted to go over why this is so important. People don't have a recollection of the magnitude of how many times these two people have done bipartisan deals for American people. Mitch McConnell is reported in a new report out today as the most Republican of Republicans you could ever have, and Joe Biden is one of the most tenured former senators you could ever have. Joe Biden became a senator at age 30 in 1974. Mitch McConnell didn't even become a senator until 1984, nearly a decade later, after being a staffer just a year before. In the years that followed, Mitch and Joe worked hand in hand in the 80s, the 90s, the years right after the turn of the new century kicked in, and then all the way up to a point at which Joe was tapped as VP. What's important to understand is these people did countless bills, not just a few, but countless bills for many, many years in the Senate. They were both senators. They understand how bills get passed. They understand what the bill provisions are and how they move forward. What's important to understand is that they understand you can do a certain number of bills and you can come back and do more bills, or you can modify the bills or refund the bills. That's what's so important, is that when I talk about stimulus on this channel, it always annoys me that I try not to show it on camera, about how they had FPEUC expire in July. There was no need to have a line in the bill that said, CARES Act 1, that said FPEUC expire in July. They could have had a provision that said continue as so warranted. And if they wanted to cancel it, they could have canceled it. But they should not have had a provision that expires it. They should not have had a provision that PUA expires in December. They should not have had a provision that FPEUC expires in December, or that eviction moratoriums expired in, I think it was in July, that mortgage forbearance expired in July. So you had all these things coming and going and going and coming. And you know what? It's slightly disingenuous for the same political officials to say, I'm now so embedded in following science, when you didn't take the time to look at science in March and determine how long should I keep these items of stimulus relief in place. You just said, oh, I'll just let them expire in December. I'll let them expire in July. Just have them expire in July. Who told you to have FPEUC expire in July? No scientist told you the pandemic was going to be gone in July. So it's very disingenuous for some political officials on both sides of the spectrum to say everything is grounded in science now. Well, it was not grounded in science when you had bill provisions for stimulus expire in July. What's great news now is that we're over and beyond that silliness, and now we can focus on doing things correctly. Joe Biden, in his recent statements over the weekend, says that he wants to have stimulus relief come in your hands, and that you're going to get in your hands is going to be more comprehensive with more things like $200 a month for SSDI, SSI, Social Security, and veterans, stimulus checks, hazard pay, FPEUC, rent eviction protection, mortgage protection, student loan debt repayment, and he says, you know what? If I got to do more bills, I'll do more bills. Finally. Now, what's important to understand is that Joe and Mitch have been doing this since 1984. They've been writing bills. And what's important for you to understand, and I have not explained it on this channel, is that this is totally different than anything that you had seen before since March. Who is Steve Mnuchin? Do you really know who Steve Mnuchin is? Steve Mnuchin is a person who had no political experience whatsoever before he showed up in Washington. He was a person tapped from Wall Street who was brought in from the outside to come into the cabinet. That's fine. You can be a Treasury Secretary from outside of Washington. That's fine. But then suddenly he was negotiating for things that senators would normally negotiate for, congressmen would normally do, and he was doing it in the confines of the Department of Treasury inside a White House building. And he was not involving congressional leaders. That's not how you do it. You do it with senators and House members working on bills. In the final days in which the stimulus negotiations unraveled before the election, you heard that Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin was suddenly getting involved a lot of staffers from subcommittees that go over the bills and calculate, can we afford more stimulus checks? Can we afford hazard pay? Can we afford FPEUC? They hadn't been doing that before. That's the problem. These people are supposed to be involved from step one, and that's what a senator knows. When you talk about Joe and Mitch negotiating the bill, it's not just Joe and Mitch. Mitch pulls in a whole field of team members that he has on his staff that goes over budgeting for things like unemployment. They have a whole department for unemployment, a whole department for businesses, small businesses that can calculate this is not enough money for small business. It needs to be repaid. It can be forgiven at this amount. They do this analysis, and what's important is that this analysis determines how much money you can get. And let's go to that. When you talk about a stimulus check, and you talk about repurposing money that's at SBA that has been unused from CARES Act 1, that calls into the real basic duties of a senator, of a McConnell, of a former Biden, a former Senator Biden. It doesn't require a 3,000-page bill to send out unused CARES Act 1 money that's sitting at PPP as a stimulus check. It doesn't take a 3,000-page bill. And the whole notion that everything is put in the same bill and we hold up 20, 40, 30 different provisions because we're working on another provision, Congress doesn't do that. That's what the Temple of Doom does. Congress doesn't do that. And so do you really think that Joe Biden's going to hold up your SSI or SSDI or Social Security or railroad benefits for $200 a month for every month for the 2021, $2,400 because they can't figure out the language about testing and tracing on page 85 of 5,000-page bill? No, of course not. that was basically doing it wrong. What's important to understand is that Mitch and Joe know how to do bills. And you heard me talk about Mitch's ability to go home on a weekend and come back the next morning with a bill done. That's the speed at which he does this. Mitch McConnell is now, I believe, in his 7th term as a senator. There's only 6 other senators in U.S. history, I believe, that have ever had a 7-term Senate run. There's a reason why he's there. 1, because Mitch McConnell can get bills passed. 2, that Mitch McConnell can pull bills out of his hat. He's known as a magician, and not in a bad way. He's known in a way in which you think you can't get a deal done, and then suddenly you do it this way, and then you do it this way, and suddenly it's done. Now, if you certainly Google Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden bill deals, and certainly when they're economic, there have been some calls in which, maybe Mitch pulled a fast one over Joe. That's certainly the opinion of the author of the article. But Joe and Mitch have negotiated economic relief before. Finally, the most important example, and there was one commenter who says, I don't want to hear this. What do you mean you don't want to hear this? This is exactly the situation you're in now. This is exactly what you have to know. There was one important situation in which Joe and Mitch have done this before. When Barack Obama was elected president-elect and Joe Biden was VP-elect, the U.S. banking industry was on failure mode. It was about to implode. Banks were about to go under. You can't have banks go under. You have banks go under, you have nothing. There's no stimulus checks. There's your gas, your credit cards. Nothing works. Everything melts down. The entire economy shuts down. As soon as the election night was unraveled and revealed, Joe made that phone call to Mitch because Joe was a 40, 50-year-old senator. Barack Obama had only been a senator for a couple of years, and called Mitch and said, you know what, we got to do something. We're going to do it very quickly. What's important for you to understand this evening is that there is a strange dichotomy and dynamic going on this week. I've not discussed it to this video, and I want to discuss it with you because it's a little confusing. The Senate on election night was won by the GOP. However, there are 2 Senate races in Georgia that are the subject of runoff elections. They are believed to go Republican as well. But Mitch McConnell is desperately concerned that they may go Democratic. Let me do the math for you. If those 2 Georgia seats go Democratic, the Senate is a Democratic Senate for Joe Biden. If the Senate seats in Georgia go both Republican, or I think even in one Republican is enough, then the Senate remains Republican. So that dynamic is creating a strange shadow walk, I guess you would say, between Joe and Mitch right now, because a lot of you are asking, what's the strange dynamics that's going on right now? And it's the 2 Georgia seats. So then there's always something. Bottom line is Joe and Mitch both want you to have unemployment assistance. Joe and Mitch both want you to have stimulus checks. Joe and Mitch both want you to have EIDL. Joe and Mitch both want you to have PPP. Joe and Mitch want you to have eviction moratorium and mortgage forbearance. The only difference is the deal provisions, how they work. Ultimately, that's the testament of negotiations, and that's not her way or the highway. We're going to get through this, and you understand that ultimately it's important to understand that negotiating things involves not just dollar symbols, but also time frame. It was very disconcerting that Congress made FPEUC to expire in late July. Now, PUA, UI, all these things are expiring in December. The focus of this channel is to make sure that you are on social media and pushing very loud as the Purple Power saying, don't have these provisions expire in, February. Doctors now say that the virus vaccine will not be in mass distribution until maybe April. So we shouldn't be guessing how many trucks are shipping a vaccine now in November. We should just make these provisions of the stimulus package far enough into the future so we're protected, so we don't have to keep on doing this every 10 seconds. And then if we don't need the provisions, then we don't need them. But don't make the provisions expire in February or January, and understand that the Problem Solvers bill had a lot of stuff in there that's expiring in just a few weeks. It's not sufficient as written. It needs to be revised. With that, if you focus on time, duration, relief, and the understanding that this is not the only bill that's going to be the relief, it's going to be the one that's getting stuff out right now that's desperately needed. We'll go through this together. If you have questions or comments in today's video, drop them in the comments below, and I might feature them in tomorrow's recording. Coming up next is Street and Stimulus. As always, stay informed, stay focused, stay motivated. Go to the Fpuc channel, subscribe. Subscribe because no one's keeping you up to date by the minute of all the twists and turns. And while this video may have been a little bit more of opinion than news updates, I wanted you to know the opinion and situation and the twists and turns of historically where these two people are. Also like this video. Coming up is Street and Stimulus. As always, stay informed, stay motivated, and stay in LA for more.